Hey guys. Okay, so right out of the gate, we learn why All for One basically wants Star and Stripes' quirk now, which is that it can pretty much control the very laws of nature and just rewrite them and all that shit. And this is one of those times where the power feels like, don't get me wrong, we pretty much learn a lot in this chapter that her power does have its limitations and all that, but the power itself is so OP where even though it is technically nerfed with the whole thing of Star and Stripe needing to touch the source or person in question in order to activate the new world and only being able to use it on like two targets. I kind of still want it nerfed even more because that still doesn't, because even though that is enough of a hindrance, it doesn't feel like enough of a hindrance to her. I don't know. It's kind of weird to me, and yet I don't. And yet that's the other thing. I don't know how you can nerf this power any more than Horikoshi already has. And I guess credit where it's due, because just knowing that Star and Stripe has such a powerful quirk makes me fear even more the numerous scenarios and possibilities of where All for One possibly could control this quirk, and in some way does kind of make just pretty much through learning of what Star and Stripes quirk can do. It does make me also weirdly forgive Horikoshi for making me feel like One for All was becoming less relevant. In fact, in this case, with what happened at the end of the chapter, I think this was Horikoshi almost reinforcing just how much more All for One All for One needs One for All and Shigaraki in order to probably gain this quirk, because it's such a powerful quirk that in order for I think an All for One to kind of in order to properly gain this power, you would almost need to be whole again in order to get it. So yeah, it's like good on that with that one. Um, which, yeah, let's talk about what happened to Shigaraki, because it's kind of hard to say with certainty what happened at the end of this chapter because he simply disappeared. But it's likely that one of two scenarios is going to happen from here based on All for One's dialogue. Either Shigaraki and All for One have now become like one complete being at this point, or it's getting dangerously close to that point. But in either case, this pretty much doesn't exactly bode well for this doesn't exactly pretty much bode well for what Izuku in terms of like if Izuku's goal is still is if Izuku is still firm in his goal to reach out and save Shigaraki, and the only way I think he would be able to accomplish that now would be to somehow reach out to him through One for All. Because that that one interesting thing to take note of as of late is that Horikoshi seems to be putting special focus on the links and connections between the two quirks, and just what exactly and just the dynamics of those links. So what I'm basically thinking right now in terms of the current state of Shigaraki's current state is that I think for Izuku, it's going to be about using his connection with One for All to somehow like sever the connection between Shigaraki and All for One, and in turn finding a way to sever the connection between the two quirks as well, in order to like severing these connections. I think is the only way to properly end this whole thing. But aside, is the only way to properly end this whole thing. And yeah, honestly, I don't know what Izuku's going to do, but he needs to figure something out at this point. Uh, with that said, one other thing to talk about is we get a little glimpse into Star and Stripes' backstory, and to the surprise of no one, All Might was her greatest inspiration, which the costume and hair with the whole like 8 tufts rather than 2, like it pretty much gave it away from the jump. But one thing of interest for me to talk about is I am starting to see more and more of why Horikoshi views. I think Horikoshi said this at one time, but I think he said he views like the Two Heroes movie as somewhat canon or required viewing. I forgot what exactly he said, but he said something to the effect that the Two Heroes movie is an important film, and and with chapters like this, I am seeing more and more of whatever he said. I am seeing more and more through this chapter of what he's talking about and what he said because it's one of those things where even if the events of the movie itself isn't canon, the history of the movie itself is. All Might's history as a hero is just as much intrinsically linked with the USA as much as Japan, and it's not even on an aesthetic costume level, but his actions while away in Japan are just as much a part of what made him the symbol of peace he had become, as much as anything he did as Japan's symbol, as the symbol of peace for Japan. And it's little backstories like that show that his legacy spans just as much on that global scale as All for One's does. Now, the only difference being All for One has many more resources at his disposal because of his influence. But yeah, it is kind of interesting. In order to get this little bit of that little bit of dialogue, kind of gives so much more insight when you look at the movie. Honestly, nowadays. And honestly, even as a backstory in itself, just pretty much does its job pretty well. We see that once upon a time, Star and Stripe was basically just a quiet, timid girl, and then all of a sudden, probably a quiet, timid girl, and then all of a sudden, All Might shows up, and like anything else, like everything regarding his legacy, he basically gave hope to the people. And yeah, and right now even more now, I kind of want Star and Stripe and All Might meet in what Star and Stripe is gonna think of All Might's current form right now, because he's definitely changed compared to when she pretty much last met him. So yeah, and actually in some ways it kind of worries me. And yeah, aside from that, there really wasn't much else to talk about with this chapter. It was really just kind of a straightforward fight scene between Star and Stripe and Shigaraki. And although one final note I will say is I love Horikoshi's implementation of the Air Force in this chapter, and how they weren't just there to act as a centerpiece for Star and Stripe's introduction, and actually had a part to play in this case to serve as an auxiliary force in the event, where she was forced to use both her use her quirk twice, which honestly I will admit I did find it a little strange that for a hero of her caliber, she can only use her power twice. But again, I still like how, but even though that wasn't the case, I still do like how it does show she basically is aware of her limits, and she also knows how to turn the situation into an advantage for herself, like with this situation. But yeah, guys, that's pretty much all I got for this review. If you enjoyed the video, like, comment, subscribe. I'm on Twitter, analyst Crunchyroll. Be sure to hit the notification bell, subscribe button, and just share the video around, guys. Dark Knight of Anime, signing off. Later, guys.